Well done, Emma. Jessica, get lost. I'll be living in the mansion. When I returned home after working overseas, my husband Troy suddenly asked me for a divorce. The reason was that he had gotten my sister Emma pregnant, and I was at a loss for words when I learned they had been having an affair. My mother-in-law and Emma looked at me smugly. Though I felt frustrated seeing their smirking faces, I quickly regained my composure and made a decision. To start taking action immediately, I gave them a perfunctory response and left the home where I had lived for many years. I'll make them regret picking a fight with me. With that thought in mind, I headed to a certain place. My name is Jessica. I used to work for a company as a fashion designer. However, when my work colleague and rival Sage quit, I also went independent. Now I'm working primarily overseas as a freelance designer. In the midst of my busy life, I have a husband. His name is Troy. We fell in love at work. I was a designer, and he was my boss, the department head of product development. Our development department and sales department often clashed. The main cause was me. Unwilling to compromise on my work, I wouldn't give in when the sales department demanded lower costs. Even when I was employed at the company, my name value was significant. Rather than using cheap fabric for mass production, I insisted on using quality materials to create more valuable products. The sales department rejected this approach. They said my designs would never sell, leading to frequent conflicts that must have given Troy plenty of headaches. Nevertheless, he respected my vision. Many customers are fond of Jessica's designs. You should create freely as you envision. Leave the negotiations with sales to me. I was attracted to his mature composure, and I confessed to him. We started dating, and things moved quickly to marriage. I thought my life would continue smoothly, but reality wasn't so kind. What? You can't have children? In our 5th year of marriage, I was still working in Japan at that time, though I had already quit the company. I was creating new pieces for overseas markets when my infertility was discovered. What value does a woman who can't bear children have? This hotel has been carefully passed down since my grandfather's generation, and you're going to ruin our hotel? You must be joking. Troy had been pressuring me about having children since the beginning of our marriage, but there was no sign of pregnancy. Troy became anxious and requested fertility testing. Since it would affect our future, I agreed to be tested. The results showed that I was the one with the issue. Troy's family runs a famous hotel. His mother insisted they couldn't let it close during their generation, so she made Troy quit his job to take over. Furthermore, she demanded that if Troy had a child, that child should inherit the hotel as well. Then the news arrived that Troy wouldn't have a child. His mother, who desperately wanted a grandchild, scolded me beyond what was necessary. You're just a burden if you can't have children despite being born a woman. We never intended to take in such a woman as our daughter-in-law. Being rather short-tempered, I was irritated by her words and strongly reacted. Regardless of her being Troy's parent, I responded logically and cornered her. With all due respect, I earn our income and manage the household. You said a woman who can't bear children has no value, but I generate more profit than Troy does. How does that make me useless? Normally, I would never belittle him, but this time I was also angry at Troy's attitude. When we worked at the company, he would always fight alongside me no matter what, but when it came to his mother, Troy would never take my side. He would take his mother's side to please her and never tried to understand my feelings. Even if you can keep the household running, what good is a woman who can't function as a woman? In this day and age, isn't it outdated to think that women must have children? If you're looking for an heir, why don't you adopt one or find someone else? Troy and I decided we would manage even without children. My mother-in-law grew irritated when I showed no sign of backing down. Her breathing became heavy. She was so excited I thought she might charge at me if I waved a red cloth. But I wasn't going to back down. His mother had started the fight. I didn't like being badgered, and if I gave in over something like this, I wouldn't have argued with the sales department so much when I was working at the company. As a designer, I can't bend my will over small matters. While encouraging myself and talking to my mother-in-law, Troy remained uninvolved. He sat behind his mother, not even making eye contact with me. That's because you're so harsh that Troy couldn't express his own opinion. That's not true. You agreed with me when we talked yesterday, didn't you? When I directed the conversation to Troy, who wasn't offering any opinions, he awkwardly avoided my gaze and mumbled from behind his mother. Well, yes, I thought that way when we discovered your infertility, but since taking over the hotel, I've been thinking. I was stunned by his vague response. He had never said anything like that before. This wasn't our first argument with his mother. Troy and I had quarreled many times since he took over the hotel. Even then, he had never said such things. Rather, he had initially tried to restrain his mother. Yet, what was he saying now? The moment I heard those incomprehensible words, my feelings for Troy vanished instantly. I became anxious about our future together, and our marriage began to deteriorate. That's unbelievable. Your husband is too cruel. Why would he bring that up now? What is he thinking? When I told Sage about this, she was angrier than I was. She was so incredulous that her mouth hung open. I know, right? And since then, he's been coming home when I'm asleep or away, as if he feels awkward facing me. After quitting the company, I often met with her at cafes like this. We'd update each other, discuss work, and talk about anything. It felt like we were sisters, and I was comfortable with her. Why don't you just divorce him? There's no reason for you to cling to him, is there? That's true, but... Sage's point was reasonable. However, his understanding of my work was very important to me. By this time, I was focusing on overseas activities. My business trips increased, and I was often away from home for more than a month at a time. It's not easy to find a marriage partner who understands such a work-heavy lifestyle. His support for my work was incredibly valuable. Sage was the one who supported my work. She had deep connections with overseas clients. The increase in my international work was thanks to her connections. Are you hesitant because he takes care of the house? But you bought the house with that agreement, right? You had a custom house built, considering your in-laws too. After going that far, they say such cruel things to you? Think about it. You don't need such terrible people. As Sage said, I bought the house for Troy and his mother. Since we couldn't spend much time together, I wanted to at least make their living comfortable. With that in mind, I purchased a barrier-free house designed for comfortable living in old age. The total cost amounted to $1 million. Sage understood my intentions. That's why she was angry at how Troy and his mother responded. You're absolutely right. I really felt that way with this issue. I'll talk with him soon. That's a good idea. After finishing venting, I was having coffee and casual conversation when Troy called. It was unusual to get a call when I was with a friend. Wondering what was happening, I answered the phone, and he began speaking hesitantly. Jessica, please divorce me. What? I could only respond absurdly to his sudden request. But he persisted with I want a divorce. Thinking the phone conversation wasn't going anywhere, I told him I'd return home immediately. As soon as I entered the house, I was surprised. For some reason, Troy's mother and my sister Emma were standing next to him. Long time no see, Jessica. Emma was looking at me with a smirk. His mother beside her also had an oddly cheerful expression, and I felt disgusted by the unusual scene. Standing there in astonishment, unable to comprehend the situation, his mother spoke snidely. Why are you just standing there? Sit down already. Troy has something important to tell you. I felt irritated by her flippant manner. However, I didn't show it on my face, holding it in my heart as I sat across from the three of them. Then Troy told me something unbelievable. Jessica, let's separate. Emma is pregnant with my baby. What do you mean? Emma, you're pregnant? I couldn't understand what I was hearing. Currently, Emma had neither a husband nor a boyfriend. Yet she was pregnant? And why would Emma's pregnancy require Troy and me to divorce? I desperately tried to make sense of it all and turned my gaze to Emma. She triumphantly delivered the shocking news. Yes, I'm pregnant with Troy's child. Troy's child? While I was wide-eyed at her incomprehensible statement, an ultrasound image was placed on the table. It clearly showed a baby, indicating that Emma and Troy's story wasn't a lie. But what did they mean by their baby? Surely not. Troy, were you having an affair with Emma? When I asked this, shocked by the unbelievable suspicion forming in my mind, his mother suddenly stood up and praised Emma. Well done. That's the situation, so you need to get lost. Now our hotel is secure. We've finally found an heir. I'll be living in this mansion from now on. You don't seem to be getting along with Troy lately, so divorce shouldn't be a problem, right? Oh, and make sure to settle the property division properly. We're having a baby, so consider it a congratulatory gift. I was speechless at their outrageous statements. Troy seemed too uncomfortable to face me, not even attempting to make eye contact. He kept looking away in silence. Sage's words echoed in my mind. As she said, I should have ended things with a man like him sooner. I regretted my own naivety. Emma, impatient with my lack of clear response, threw harsh words at me. Hey, are you listening? I'm telling you to divorce Troy. Got it? Emma continued angrily. I was the one who should be angry. However, getting mad at people like them would be a waste of energy. I stood up forcefully from the sofa, gave a casual response, and left the house. Emma and her mother-in-law were shouting something, but I had no interest in listening. I immediately left the home where I had lived for so many years to take certain actions. There was no way I would stay silent after being treated like this. I would make them regret picking a fight with me. What I visited was the top floor of a certain building. There, I made an appointment with someone and revealed everything that had happened. I was executing my revenge plan to teach Troy and the others a lesson. 1 month later, I divorced Troy as he had requested. The house with its remaining loan of about $9,000 was transferred to Troy as they wished. The only remaining issue was the property division. However, an unexpected situation arose for Troy and the others. Somehow Troy, his mother, and Emma had tracked down my new residence and suddenly barged in, shouting, "What the hell are you playing at? Why is there still a loan on the house? I wasn't told the tax bill would be that high. There's no way I can pay such an amount. This is fraud. And you're not moving forward with the property division either. What's going on? Say something." What were these grown adults doing, suddenly barging into someone's home? I couldn't tolerate neighbors complaining about the noise at my front door. Reluctantly, I let them in. After showing them to the living room, I immediately called someone. When I returned to the room after finishing the call, the 3 of them were actually rummaging through my house. They looked just like thieves. As I stood there speechless at the unbelievable sight, Troy's mother, noticing my return, shrieked, "Where are the bank books? You're hiding the property division money, aren't you? Show us all your assets right now." I had never seen someone so brazenly searching for valuables. I truly felt glad that I had divorced him. It's useless to search. I don't keep any valuables here. Does that mean you have another house besides this one? Of course. Why would I put my house in the same area where you all live? This is just one of my bases. My headquarters is in Paris, France. The 3 of them gasped in surprise at my revelation. I had anticipated that Troy and the others would desperately search for me. I also knew they didn't have enough financial power to maintain that house. I had expected them to raid my house like this, and moreover, Troy's mother, Troy, and Emma all lacked common sense. Taxes are inevitable. Yet none of the three had questioned that. It's proof they had always left everything to others. Nothing is scarier than ignorance. Couldn't Troy's mother, who manages a hotel, imagine such things? Her ignorance was unbelievable. But thinking about it, this outcome was inevitable because she had entrusted all the hotel management and accounting to her husband. I had never heard of Troy's mother being involved in the hotel's accounting. Still, I was surprised at how little common sense she had. It was astonishing to hear. While I was looking at the three of them with these thoughts, Emma approached me with a shrill voice. "Why are you the only one so wealthy? We're about to be kicked out of our house. Won't you help us out of mercy? Are you out of your mind? Why should I help bottom feeders like you? The house maintenance costs and taxes are the result of your own lack of knowledge. You brought this on yourselves. It has nothing to do with me." Emma bit her lip in frustration as I coldly responded while looking away. "If you have so much money, give us the property division money right away. Before that, I have some matters to settle, so I'm putting that discussion on hold for now." Matters to settle? The three of them looked puzzled as if they had no idea what I meant. Just then, almost as if on cue, the doorbell rang. Troy's mother glared at the door as if to say who could it be at a time like this, but I calmly went to greet the visitor. I warmly welcomed the visitors and brought them back inside. When I returned with the visitors and presented them to the three, their faces turned pale. Troy's mother, in particular, changed color. She trembled with fear at the sight of the visitor. "Why are you here?" She managed to squeeze out the words in a trembling voice. The person who gave her a cold look was Troy's mother's father, Troy's grandfather. "You people are truly pathetic. Why is father here? Why? Are you connected to this woman somehow?" Troy's mother expressed her surprise and confusion. Her father directed a stern gaze at her in response to her statement. "This woman? Who do you think you're talking to?" Troy's mother's father was an old-fashioned, strict man, and she found him difficult to deal with. He had always been very kind to me, greeting me with a smile whenever I visited. So I couldn't understand why Troy's mother and Troy were so afraid of him. But now I finally understood. He was only gentle with me, and Troy's mother and the others received such harsh treatment from him. No wonder they were afraid. His intensity was tremendous. Even Emma, meeting him for the first time, was pale with fear at his presence. I reunited with Jessica in Paris and heard about the divorce. I was so disappointed to learn that my granddaughter and daughter had done such a despicable thing to her that I couldn't even find words. After handing over the hotel to Troy's mother's husband, Troy's grandfather started a new business. He began managing a French restaurant with a chef who had helped build the hotel. That restaurant became wildly popular in New York. Its popularity with overseas customers led to expansion into Paris. That's where we reunited, at his Paris restaurant. Jessica and I often met in Paris. She didn't have many friends there, so we'd contact each other whenever we visited Paris. His restaurant was membership-based, and Sage was the one who had helped us reconnect. Sage was such a regular that she had face recognition access to his restaurant. They even dined together privately, and she had advised me to consult with him about this situation. Thanks to that, I had successfully acted before Troy's mother and the others. Since he was a significant figure to Troy's father, I thought if his grandfather heard my side of the story, Troy's father would also take my side. I made preliminary arrangements before Troy's mother and the others could act. I successfully made them my allies. Your grandmother is also a fan of my brand, so she's a valued customer too. Why didn't you tell me that? Troy was furious, probably feeling I should have reported this. That irritated me, and I gave him a cold look, responding firmly. What good would it have done? It's common sense to discuss such important matters when you're married. Common sense? Don't make me laugh. If you're going to talk about common sense, you shouldn't have had an affair and gotten someone pregnant. Why should I tell a man like that about my circumstances? Troy was at a loss for words after being confronted with the truth. At that moment, another visitor who had arrived with Troy's mother's father showed themselves. It was my legal advisor. Since we're discussing Emma, I'd like to address something. Regarding the property division with Jessica, I'd like to handle this matter first. What is this? The lawyer handed Troy a document with a pleasant smile. Troy was shocked by its contents. It stated that compensation was being claimed for the affair. Did you think there would be no consequences after cheating on me? That's not possible. I need to take what I'm entitled to. But I can't pay such a large amount. We're already struggling with the house loan. That's not my problem. You all wanted the house, right? I just transferred it as requested. I don't appreciate being snapped at. Troy was at a loss for words again after being told the plain truth. Emma watched his pitiful appearance. Most likely, Emma had targeted Troy as a way to spite me and for his assets. However, those assets wouldn't become Emma's. Since his mother intended to pass them to her grandchild, Emma might have ownership but couldn't use them. Understanding this, she had demanded the house to create money she could use. If you have complaints, tell that woman. I didn't force the transfer on you. I calmly responded to his childish rebellion. When I pointed out that Emma had wanted the house, Troy seemed to agree. He glared at Emma, who became flustered. Hey, why are you blaming me? You also agreed that you wanted that house. If you hadn't suggested it, I would have considered moving back to my parents' house. It's your fault. Don't you understand yet that this was caused by your own ignorance? Troy's grandfather's anger seemed to peak as he watched Troy and the others arguing disgracefully. His fierce shout was directed at Troy's mother and the others, making all three jump in surprise. Anyone can imagine that taking over such a mansion would mean high taxes and enormous maintenance costs. Yet none of you even questioned this, and worse, you complained to Jessica, who had been quietly paying the loan all this time. Don't talk such nonsense. After being confronted with this reasonable argument, all three fell silent. They all hung their heads and wouldn't look up. Seeing their pathetic state, Troy's grandfather let out a heavy sigh. Jessica, I'm sorry. Because of my inadequacy, you've been terribly inconvenienced. It's not your fault. So please don't apologize. Make sure you get proper compensation from these people. I won't help them with that. No! Please, don't abandon us. So that's why Troy's mother had been so bold. She had her father as a last resort. In the worst case, whether it became a divorce trial or property division dispute, Troy's mother had planned to ask her father for financial help. Such a sweet calculation was transparent to me. I was truly relieved that I had made preliminary arrangements. Thank you. Then, we will proceed with this claim properly. Please be aware that if you do not comply, we will take legal measures, and it may become a court case. I was impressed by the skillfulness of the sharp-witted lawyer. For him too, winning this case would mean a substantial reward. His smile probably reflected his excitement for this lucrative work. Troy's mother showed a look of despair at his smile. Beside her, Emma was shouting, "Do something. This isn't what we agreed on. You said if we got rid of Jessica, we wouldn't have money troubles. That was the promise, right? Shut up. That was my intention too." I see, so that's how it was. Emma's statement finally made everything make sense. Even Emma must have understood what would happen if she made a move on my husband. Yet the reason she took such action was related to something she had kept secret from Troy and his mother. You didn't tell Troy and the others about your debt, did you? In response to my statement, I showed Troy and his surprised mother a certain photo I had received from my mother. This was enclosed in a letter I received from my mother. After I reported my divorce from Troy, this was sent to me. Stop it! Emma, probably thinking I didn't know about the debt situation, frantically tried to silence me, but it was too late. I showed them the letter from my mother. Emma had incurred a debt of $50,000 before her pregnancy was discovered, and she had asked my mother to cover it. $50,000? What the hell is that? The letter from my mother included photos of numerous collection notices. The letter also had traces of tears, clearly conveying my mother's distress. My mother had raised us single-handedly. I couldn't imagine causing her more trouble instead of showing gratitude. That old hag, doing unnecessary things. Although she probably thought she was whispering, it was clearly audible. Troy's mother and Troy might not have known about Emma's bad language. They looked surprised at her change in tone, with their mouths hanging open. From your reaction, it seems the debt story is true. In contrast to the surprised Troy's mother and Troy, Troy's grandfather coolly observed Emma, just as I did. After carefully assessing her behavior and confirming my testimony was true, he spoke with contempt for her. Then Troy's mother and Troy also came to their senses and began accusing Emma. You plague! What were you thinking hiding your debt? Shut up! If I had told you about the debt, you wouldn't have agreed to have a baby with me, right? Of course not. Why would I take the risk of an affair and then walk such a dangerous tightrope? That's absurd. Everyone began shifting blame onto each other. I sighed at the ugly argument, growing tired of it. Jessica, I was wrong. I didn't realize Emma was this kind of woman. Troy must have noticed my demeanor. Rather than engaging in a pointless argument, what they needed to do now was show sincerity and get me to forgive them. Thinking this, Troy changed his strategy. He approached me and looked at me pleadingly. You were bad-mouthing Jessica all this time. Shut up. You stay out of this. Troy made an unbelievable statement towards Emma, who was revealing facts he didn't want exposed. At this point, I had complete contempt for him as a person. I looked at Troy coldly. I'll never do anything like this again. I don't even want the child. I'll support you with all my might from now on. So please, can't you let this incident go? Troy strung together words assuming I would forgive him. However, such a convenient outcome was impossible. I crossed my arms, looked down at Troy, and fired off my words. Are you stupid? No matter how much you apologize or whatever you do, I would never forgive you all. Besides, I'm thrilled to be divorced from you. It feels like I've finally gotten rid of an annoying burden. I had never spoken to Troy like this before. I had always held back and tried to respond like an adult, but he was the kind of person who would track down someone's house and barge in uninvited. Such consideration wasn't necessary. With that in mind, I treated him coldly, as if dealing with an intruder. I'll make sure to get my due for everything you've done. Look forward to the compensation claim. Having said what I wanted to say, I signaled to Troy's grandfather. Then, his attendants who had been waiting outside entered and escorted Troy and the others away. They pleaded, "Please forgive us," until the end, but I paid no attention to their voices. This is how I successfully cut ties with the three of them and claimed compensation from each. Through my connections, I discovered that Emma and Troy had been having an affair for 3 years. She had set up a blog on the internet where she wrote about Troy. These were considered definitive evidence of the affair. As a result, the amount of compensation increased significantly. My house had been ransacked, and my marriage had been ruined. If they didn't comply with the payment, I planned to involve the police for attempted theft. When I told them this, they showed a fighting stance, and the matter developed into a lawsuit. However, I had carefully documented all the evidence on camera, ensuring victory in court. Moreover, I had recorded all of our recent interactions on a voice recorder. Troy's voice admitting to the affair was clearly captured, and realizing they would lose the battle, Troy's mother and the others reluctantly gave in. Afterward, I leaked this story to a journalist I knew. Since Troy's hotel was frequented by celebrities, the journalist thought it was worthy of an article and featured it prominently in a weekly magazine. As a result, the hotel's reputation was tarnished, and Troy was fired. His mother was also fired, and his father was furious with her. I heard he demanded a divorce and cut ties with them due to the disgraceful behavior of his son and wife. Subsequently, their names became widely known to the public, and they faced an unbelievable amount of backlash. Emma's name was also published, resulting in the termination of her contracts with various companies. She had been working as a model, but those jobs stopped coming in, and she's currently in a big dispute with Troy. He has started saying he won't acknowledge the child. Emma tried to appeal to Troy's mother about this, but of course, Troy's mother took Troy's side. Abandoned by both, I heard Emma gave her child up for adoption. My mother and I have cut ties with Emma. I hear she now lives in an old apartment. With greater retribution falling on them than I had expected, I felt my feelings somewhat cleared. In stark contrast to the three of them facing such turmoil, I was enriching both my private life and work. I invited my mother to Paris, and she now supports my work. Thanks to Troy's grandfather, my team also flourished in Paris and became widely known. Sage was also cooperative with this challenge, and now she's working with me again. She moved from designing to sales work, while I handled design and creation. I'm so glad to see the smile back on your face. It's all thanks to you, Sage. Thank you so much. Don't let unpleasant things remain unpleasant. Rather, turn that adversity into energy and overcome it. There's no time to wallow in misery. I must keep looking forward and work hard. With that determination to encourage myself, I would continue to strive alongside Sage.